Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to the quiet, stone walls of a medieval monastery, where life was ruled by the rise and fall of the sun, prayer bells, and, of course, sleep. Imagine yourself wrapped in the stillness of the night, the echoing chime of a bell cutting through the cold morning air, waking you from a deep slumber. The monks in these monasteries had a strict routine, up at the crack of dawn, or maybe even a little earlier, their day dictated by prayer, work, and the ever-important sleep. But what did it mean for them to rest, and how did they manage their sleep in such a strict, spiritually rigorous world? You probably won't survive the early wake-ups. They had no modern snooze buttons to catch those precious extra minutes of sleep, but hey, that's exactly what we're diving into tonight. The idea of the snooze button has a much older history than you might think, and no, it wasn't invented with alarm clocks or phones, it was actually created by monks in the Middle Ages. Sounds wild, right? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and what time it is where you are. Do you feel the early morning pressure of waking up too soon? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. In medieval monasteries, sleep wasn't just for recharging, it was part of a greater spiritual rhythm. The monks followed a rigid daily schedule, one that revolved around prayer, manual labor, and brief moments of rest. They were far from lazy. Their sleep wasn't about luxury or indulgence. Instead, it was seen as part of their spiritual discipline. Sleep was viewed as a necessary respite in their physically demanding lives, where the body and mind could rest and prepare to engage once again in their holy duties. The monks' sleep wasn't left to chance. The daily routine was split into times for work, times for prayer, and very specific times for rest. And as much as we like to imagine monks being this serene, wise group of people, their sleep schedule wasn't just snooze and reset. No, it was often more like the first true snooze button, an interruption built into their regimen. Historians still argue whether the monks had this ritualized interruption as part of their schedules out of necessity or whether it was simply due to the structure of monastic life, which was so rigid that rest could hardly ever happen uninterrupted. Some argue it was a deeply rooted spiritual belief, while others believe it was a way of preventing too much indulgence in sleep, keeping the monks focused on their holy duties rather than sleep itself. But the bottom line was that monks were some of the earliest practitioners of what we now know as the snooze button. The chime of a bell in the morning was their way of waking up for prayer, but many monks, often just like you, hitting the snooze button on your phone, didn't always jump out of bed immediately. Instead, they had a brief interval of rest after their initial wake-up, a time where they could stretch, prepare themselves mentally, and ease into the physical demands of their next tasks. This moment of rest, or brief delay in getting up, was not only practical, it was also spiritual. The monks believed that proper rest was essential to serving God with a clear mind and a rejuvenated body. So, in the cold, early hours of the morning, when the bell rang through the monastery, the monks' initial waking wasn't the end of their rest, it was the beginning of a carefully planned process to prepare them for the next step in their duties. Imagine the monks slowly rousing themselves to that familiar sound of the bell, the room still dim with early light, and the promise of a brief, peaceful moment of quiet before the hustle of the day began. You can almost feel the contrast between the stillness of the night and the urgency of their responsibilities. In a way, that's what sleep was about for the monks, balance. The rhythm of waking and resting was as much a spiritual practice as their daily prayers. It wasn't about indulgence. It was about purpose and discipline. Their approach to sleep, and the ritual of wakefulness that accompanied it, set the foundation for how we view sleep today, especially the way we give ourselves a few extra moments to rest after an alarm rings. The first snooze button, it seems, had deep, spiritual roots that still influence how we approach sleep and wakefulness today. Now that we've set the stage for the monks' structured sleep rituals, let's take a closer look at how their daily schedule was divided and why sleep played such a crucial role in their lives. Picture this: you're in the dark, chilly hours of the early morning, the first chime of the bell rings out through the monastery, and it's time to wake up. But here's the catch: the monks weren't expected to simply jump out of bed and get going. No, their day began with a gentle transition, a period of quiet awakening, a moment to gather themselves before the grueling routine of prayer and work began. Historians still argue whether this structured sleep schedule was based on practical necessity or spiritual discipline. Some scholars suggest that it was about ensuring the monks remained focused on their work without slipping into laziness or indulgence. Others believe it was rooted in Zoroastrian or Christian spirituality, with an emphasis on maintaining physical purity and mental clarity for the important work they were engaged in, praying and performing divine tasks. Regardless of the reasons behind it, one thing is clear: the monks followed a schedule that was divided into distinct periods of wakefulness and rest, and their sleep was closely tied to their religious practices. The day in a medieval monastery wasn't just broken up by meals and work, it was organized around a cycle of prayers, with specific times for sleep strategically placed to maintain their energy levels. The monks were allowed short periods of sleep in the middle of the day, what we would now recognize as a form of midday rest or siesta. It wasn't just a chance to relax or recover from the morning's activities, it was also meant to allow the monks to be at their mental best for their next spiritual duties. These midday naps were seen as a time to recharge, so they could approach their next period of prayer and work with full focus and dedication. Unlike our modern society, where we often rush through our days with little regard for rest, the monks took careful steps to ensure that rest was part of their spiritual routine. Their sleep wasn't just a time for physical recovery, it was a time for mental purification, allowing them to restore their spiritual energy so they could approach the next task with clarity. The monks believed that sleep, even if it was brief, allowed them to be closer to God and better prepared for their work. But here's the twist: the monks didn't just have 1 or 2 long periods of sleep each night. Instead, their sleep was often broken up into multiple segments. The first period of sleep occurred after the evening prayers, when the monks would rest for a few hours before getting up for midnight prayers. This interrupted rest allowed the monks to work during the night, keeping their spiritual focus sharp and preparing for their duties in the morning. The monks would rise again, attend more prayers, and engage in physical labor, like copying religious texts, tending to gardens, or other tasks that supported the monastic community. This practice of dividing their sleep into multiple segments wasn't just about productivity, it was about maintaining spiritual readiness at all times. The monks saw sleep as part of the larger rhythm of their lives, a rhythm that kept them connected to the divine. Instead of focusing on long hours of sleep, they adopted the mindset that short periods of rest, carefully timed throughout the day, would leave them mentally prepared for whatever came next. Sleep wasn't the final escape from the day, it was a chance to reset, reflect, and renew their spiritual strength. Modern-day sleep science often recommends a similar approach, focusing on quality over quantity, and dividing rest into segments for those who have irregular schedules. We now know that broken sleep, such as taking naps throughout the day, can actually improve mental clarity, creativity, and overall productivity. The monks, in their pursuit of spiritual harmony, unintentionally stumbled upon something we now know to be beneficial for our physical and mental well-being. Historians still argue whether these segmented sleep cycles were necessary for the monks' spiritual discipline, or if they were just a reflection of the harsh realities of medieval monastic life. Some scholars believe that the monks didn't have a choice, they had to break up their sleep in order to attend to the many prayers, services, and work required of them. Others argue that the practice of interrupted sleep was rooted in their belief in balance, the balance between rest, prayer, and physical labor. Either way, it's clear that these sleep rituals were part of a larger system of daily routines that helped the monks achieve spiritual balance and connection. Imagine being in that monastery, with its cool stone walls and the rhythmic sound of the bell marking each moment of prayer and rest. As you prepare for sleep tonight, think about the monks' approach, how they organized their days not just for productivity, but for mental clarity and spiritual connection. While our lives may not revolve around prayer bells, we can certainly learn from their commitment to ritual, balance, and the importance of rest. As we continue to dive into the sleep habits of medieval monks, it's important to consider the tools and techniques they used to enhance their sleep. While we often think of the Middle Ages as a time of hardship and discomfort, monks took great care in creating sleep environments that were as conducive to spiritual rest as they were to physical recovery. From their sleepwear to their sleeping arrangements, monks had their own unique way of managing rest, balancing simplicity, comfort, and spiritual purity. Let's start with the beds. If you've ever had a hard time sleeping on a mattress that's a little too firm, you can't help but appreciate what the monks went through. Medieval monk beds were often simple wooden frames, sometimes with a thin mattress made from basic materials such as wool, straw, or feathers. There was no modern memory foam here, just a small, humble cushion or pallet to rest on. The idea was that by simplifying their sleep environments, monks could avoid distractions and maintain their spiritual focus. The basic bed, much like everything else in their lives, was meant to be functional, not luxurious. But despite the simplicity, these beds were designed with purpose. The low beds and raised wooden frames allowed monks to sleep off the cold floor, providing better ventilation and warmth. Even though the beds were far from luxurious by modern standards, they were designed to keep the monks comfortable enough to rest properly, yet humble enough to prevent them from becoming too attached to material comforts. After all, their primary focus was on spiritual growth, not indulgence. Now, let's talk about sleepwear. The monks were known for their modesty, and their sleeping habits were no exception. Most monks would have worn simple, loose robes made from plain, durable fabric. They were meant to be comfortable but not excessive, as the monks followed the principle of austerity in all aspects of life. Even their sleepwear was designed to keep them connected to the idea that they were servants of God, not material wealth. It's worth noting that sleepwear in the modern sense as we know it didn't really exist in the way we think of it today. The monks' robes were their nightgowns, and in many ways, they wore their spiritual identity to bed as well. Historians still debate whether monks' sleepwear and their sleep rituals were intentionally minimalist to help them focus on their spiritual duties or if it was simply a reflection of the harsh conditions they endured. Some believe that simplicity in all aspects of their lives helped maintain their focus, while others argue that it was a matter of practical necessity. After all, the medieval world didn't have the same comfort standards we're used to. Either way, the point is that the monks' commitment to a simple and humble lifestyle extended all the way to their sleeping habits. The sleep environment was equally important. While the medieval monks didn't have the luxury of temperature-controlled rooms or cozy blankets like we do today, they still made sure that their sleeping spaces were as comfortable as possible. As previously mentioned, the beds were designed to keep the monks off the cold floor, but they also incorporated thick woolen blankets and even hay or straw for added warmth. The idea was to ensure that the monk had enough comfort to sleep, but not so much that they would become distracted or too comfortable. The simple goal was to balance comfort with austerity, enough to rest, but not so much as to indulge. In the cold and often damp medieval winters, a fireplace or small stove might have been used to warm the rooms, though fire was kept at a minimum to avoid distractions. The monks often had small personal lanterns or candles for reading or writing, but the focus was always on quiet and stillness. Just like their sleepwear and their beds, their rooms were meant to minimize distractions. In this peaceful solitude, they could reflect, pray, and prepare for the spiritual tasks of the day ahead. This focus on the environment of rest was crucial in creating an ideal sleeping space that supported the monk's spiritual well-being. Sleep wasn't just about physical recovery, it was about ensuring that the monk's mind and soul were in a peaceful and renewed state. The quiet, humble surroundings in which they slept helped maintain an atmosphere of spiritual discipline, allowing the monks to rest while staying connected to their divine calling. It's also worth noting that sleep in the medieval period was considered more of a community activity than an isolated one. In larger monasteries, shared dormitories meant that the monks slept in close proximity to one another. This communal sleep was meant to foster a sense of brotherhood and spiritual unity, where each monk could rest in harmony with the others, united by their common purpose. The idea of communal rest might seem foreign to us in the modern world, where we often cherish our privacy and solitude when it comes to sleep, but the medieval monks viewed their shared sleep as another aspect of their spiritual practice, a way to stay connected with their faith and community. Historians still debate whether the communal aspect of sleep in monasteries helped foster stronger bonds among monks, or if it was more a reflection of the limited resources and space constraints that medieval communities faced. Some argue that the communal sleep encouraged unity and spiritual focus, while others believe it was simply practical, the dormitories were designed to accommodate as many monks as possible. Regardless of the reason, the shared sleeping spaces of the monks played an important role in their daily lives and spiritual practice. As you picture yourself in a medieval monastery, resting in a simple wooden bed in a quiet shared room, imagine the peaceful atmosphere created by the monks' sleep practices. Their rituals of simplicity and humble comfort were designed to support not just physical rest but spiritual growth. You may not share a communal dormitory or sleep on a wooden plank, but there's something to be said about the focus the monks placed on peaceful rest and how we can apply some of their timeless wisdom to our modern lives. Now that we've explored the sleep environment and routines of the medieval monks, it's fascinating to think about how these practices evolved over time and the legacy they left on modern sleep habits. While we might not be sleeping on wooden frames or hearing bells ring at the crack of dawn, the basic principles of sleep as a spiritual and physical necessity still hold true. The monks' unique approach to sleep was deeply connected to their faith, and in many ways, the rhythms of their sleep rituals help to shape how we approach rest and mental clarity today. The concept of the snooze button, which we often take for granted in our modern world of alarm clocks and morning routines, actually traces its origins back to these medieval monasteries. The idea that one could have a brief moment of rest after waking up, a small interruption to ease the transition between sleep and wakefulness, was something the monks practiced long before we ever thought of hitting a button on our phones to snatch a few extra minutes of rest. The monks' subtle version of the snooze button wasn't about indulgence, it was about creating the right balance between spiritual readiness and physical rest. Let's pause and think about the historical importance of this practice. The idea of sleep interruption was likely seen as a necessary act to maintain focus and spiritual discipline. If you think about it, this tiny moment of extra rest wasn't about laziness. Instead, it was a moment to gather one's thoughts and prepare for the day's work. In modern times, we may see the snooze button as a way to avoid the inevitable, but in the monastic tradition, it had a very purposeful role. The monks' rhythm of interrupted rest helped maintain their spiritual clarity and mental preparedness for the day's divine tasks. Historians still argue whether the monks' sleep schedule, with its interruptions and divisions, was a spiritual choice or a pragmatic one. Did they break their sleep into segments simply because of the rigid demands of their daily routines, or was this sleep practice inherently spiritual? Some believe it was a direct reflection of their spiritual disciplines, to never indulge too deeply in sleep and remain alert to divine callings. Others suggest that these interruptions were practical ways to align sleep with their more active spiritual roles, ensuring the monks stayed rested but not distracted by the temptation of oversleeping. Regardless, the ritualized approach to sleep reflected the deep connection between their physical rest and their spiritual purpose. By embracing sleep as part of spiritual practice, the monks of the medieval period helped to shape a legacy of rest that transcended generations. Today, we've modernized sleep through comfort, with pillows, blankets, and beds designed to provide optimal rest. But the underlying principles of ritual and balance remain in place. Sleep hygiene has become a part of mainstream wellness culture, emphasizing not just the amount of sleep, but the quality and the environment in which we rest. This idea of a sacred space for rest is a thread that runs directly from the monastic traditions to modern sleep practices. The ritualistic aspects of the monks' sleep routines, such as lighting candles or burning incense for peace and purification, are echoes of modern wellness practices. Think about how in today's world, many of us use calming scents, soothing music, or meditation to prepare for sleep. While we may not rely on candles and incense to the same degree, the principle remains, to create an environment that fosters mental peace, physical relaxation, and spiritual alignment. In that sense, the monks' sleep rituals were ahead of their time, understanding the transformative power of a well-crafted rest environment long before it became mainstream. One interesting parallel to the medieval practice of snooze buttons is the modern concept of sleep cycles. We now understand that the quality of sleep matters as much as the quantity, and the monks' approach to interrupted rest mirrored what we now know about sleep patterns. Today, sleep experts talk about the importance of cycle alignment, staying in sync with your body's natural rhythms to ensure restful sleep. In essence, the monks were unknowingly practicing the art of sleep optimization, understanding the need for balance and the importance of recovery. As you think about your own sleep routine tonight, imagine how much of that ritualized practice might have come from the monks of the Middle Ages. They didn't just rest, they created a sacred space for their minds and bodies to recharge. While their beds may have been humble and their waking hours early, their approach to sleep offers us a timeless reminder that rest isn't just for recovery, it's a spiritual practice, one that can rejuvenate both the body and the soul. Before you close your eyes tonight, think about your own space, whether it's as simple as adjusting the lighting or taking a moment for peaceful reflection, and consider how creating your own ritual for rest can help align you for a more restorative sleep. As we delve deeper into the sleep practices of medieval monks, we must examine how these sleep rituals reflected their beliefs about spiritual discipline and the quest for balance in all aspects of life. For the monks, sleep wasn't simply about resting, it was a spiritual endeavor, a necessary practice that allowed them to maintain their focus on prayer, work, and their commitment to God. Every aspect of their sleep, from its structure to the environment in which they rested, was carefully designed to maintain their discipline and spiritual alignment. The structured sleep routine that the monks followed had a distinct rhythm, one that was intentionally interrupted to ensure that they were never too far removed from their religious duties. This was more than just a pragmatic necessity, it was a key part of their spiritual journey. In a world where indulgence in comfort was seen as a distraction, the monks sought a middle path that allowed them to rest but remain vigilant and connected to their divine work. Their interrupted rest was meant to enhance their spiritual clarity, ensuring they were always ready to answer God's call, even in the middle of the night. This practice of dividing sleep into multiple periods, interrupted by moments of prayer or work, echoes the modern practice of segmenting sleep. While today, we often prioritize 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep, we now understand the benefits of split sleep or polyphasic sleep, where rest is divided into smaller, more frequent intervals. The monks, it seems, were long aware of the benefits of a nonlinear sleep pattern, although their primary focus was on maintaining their spiritual discipline, not optimizing their rest for physical health. Historians still argue whether the monks' segmented sleep was a spiritual necessity or simply the result of the harsh demands of monastic life. Some believe that the monks broke their sleep schedule out of necessity, praying, working, and performing religious duties often meant sacrificing full, uninterrupted sleep. Others argue that this segmented sleep was a deliberate spiritual practice, allowing them to find balance between their physical and spiritual needs. But what's clear is that the monks took their sleep routine seriously. They viewed sleep as a necessary part of their religious obligations, ensuring that their rest was part of their larger spiritual rhythm. Sleep was not about escaping the world, it was about restoring and aligning the soul with God's will, ensuring that their bodies were prepared for the work of the day ahead. And despite the lack of modern conveniences, monks were able to create a space of peace and serenity that allowed them to rest while remaining spiritually focused. Historians also point out the impact of medieval Christian beliefs on the way sleep was approached in monastic life. For the monks, sleep was not just a physical necessity, it was seen as part of their devotion to God. The monks' belief in physical discipline often extended to their sleep habits as well. Unlike modern cultures where comfort and luxury are prioritized, medieval monks were encouraged to view physical discomfort as a spiritual practice, helping them stay humble and focused on their spiritual journey. Their beds, made of wood, straw, and thin blankets, were intentionally uncomfortable, reflecting their commitment to simplicity and austerity. Comfort, for the monks, was not the goal, spiritual alignment was. And yet, despite this commitment to simplicity and humility, rest was still necessary. The monks knew that in order to fulfill their duties and remain connected to their faith, they needed to get some rest, even if it was just in short bursts throughout the day. This segmented sleep routine was the first form of what we might now recognize as the snooze button, a way to break up long hours of wakefulness and allow the body to recover without losing focus on the spiritual tasks at hand. This early version of the snooze button was rooted in practical necessity but also carried a deep spiritual meaning. It wasn't about putting off responsibilities, but about maintaining the balance between work, rest, and spirituality. Imagine yourself in the shoes of a medieval monk. It's the middle of the night, and the bell rings for midnight prayers. You've had a few hours of rest, but you're expected to rise and attend to your duties. You don't get to sleep in until the sun comes up, you get back up and engage in spiritual work. But there's that quiet moment before you fully wake, that brief, sacred pause when you close your eyes again for just a moment, preparing your body and soul for the task ahead. That moment of peace before rising to serve is the original form of what we know today as the snooze button, a short period of rest, a slight interruption in your sleep cycle, to allow yourself time to reconnect with your purpose before diving into the next task. The connection between rest and spirituality in the monks' lives is something we can still draw from today. While we may not follow the same practices of divided sleep or interrupted rest, the idea that balance and purpose should guide our sleep rituals is just as relevant in the modern world. Sleep is not just a biological necessity, it's an opportunity to recharge, restore, and connect with our deeper selves. The monks understood that their sleep wasn't a time of escape, it was a time for spiritual renewal, a time to rest, reflect, and prepare for the work that lay ahead. As we continue exploring the role of sleep in medieval monasteries, let's take a closer look at how the rituals surrounding sleep reflected the larger spiritual journey of the monks. The act of sleeping wasn't just about rest, but about creating a connection with the divine and maintaining a sense of balance in their lives. The monks' relationship with sleep was deeply tied to their spiritual obligations. Every aspect of their daily schedule, including when and how they slept, was centered around their devotion to God and their community. In the context of their spiritual practice, sleep was treated as an essential part of the rhythm of life. The monks didn't sleep just for physical rest, they used sleep to maintain mental and spiritual clarity. Before going to bed, many monks would engage in prayers or reflection, mentally preparing for their time of rest. This wasn't a quick process, it was part of their commitment to spiritual purity and readiness for the next day. By dedicating time before bed to reflect on their actions, offer thanks, and set their intentions, they created a peaceful state of mind that set the stage for a more restorative sleep. This is something we can certainly draw from today. Mindful rest is often seen as a modern concept, whether through meditation, gratitude practices, or gentle evening rituals, but the monks were incorporating these same principles into their sleep routines centuries ago. By consciously preparing for sleep, they allowed themselves to enter a peaceful, divinely aligned state, ensuring their spiritual readiness and mental peace. And though we may not have to wake at the crack of dawn for prayer services, the idea of preparing mentally for sleep, whether through reflection or simply creating a peaceful environment, still carries significance for us. The monks' commitment to spiritual discipline didn't just extend to their waking hours, it was a 24/7 endeavor, where everything they did, from work to prayer to sleep, was meant to align with their greater spiritual calling. Sleep, for them, wasn't a necessary break from a busy life, it was part of that life, just as important as any prayer or task. They understood that proper rest allowed them to stay connected to their faith and community, and that sleep wasn't just about catching up on energy, it was about ensuring that they were physically and spiritually ready for the next day's work. Now, let's pause for a moment and reflect on how these ancient practices mirror some of our modern wellness rituals. In our busy lives, we often treat sleep as a passive experience, something that we're forced to do at the end of a long day. But the monks understood that rest was active. It required preparation, intention, and commitment. Today, as we strive for wellness, we're learning that intentional rest can have a significant impact on our overall health, mental clarity, and ability to function throughout the day. The ancient monks knew this and made sleep an essential part of their spiritual practice. It wasn't just a necessary pause in their day, it was a chance for renewal and rejuvenation that impacted every aspect of their lives. The importance of routine was also central to the monks' approach to sleep. Their lives were organized around prayer, study, and work, all of which had specific times. Sleep wasn't something that could simply be squeezed in whenever they had time. It had its designated place in their day. This strict schedule allowed them to manage their time effectively and maintain a sense of balance. The monks didn't just sleep, they created a sleep ritual that supported their daily structure. By maintaining this routine, they ensured that their rest was purposeful and aligned with their spiritual goals. It's clear that the monks' sleep schedule was a form of self-care, albeit one rooted in their spiritual goals. Their sleep wasn't about indulgence or luxury, it was about ensuring they were rested, mentally clear, and spiritually prepared for the work ahead. By maintaining such a disciplined approach to sleep, the monks ensured that their physical rest was in line with their spiritual commitment. This balance between rest and productivity is something that modern society often struggles with. Today, we're still trying to figure out how to balance our work and personal lives with rest, and the monks' approach offers us a valuable lesson in intentionality. The monks were also masters at creating a calming sleep environment. They didn't have access to modern luxuries like soft mattresses, memory foam, or silk sheets, but they understood the importance of creating peace and simplicity in their sleeping space. The bare-bones nature of their sleeping arrangements, simple wooden frames and modest bedding, reflected their commitment to simplicity and spiritual focus. It wasn't about comfort, it was about intentional rest. Their approach to sleep, much like their approach to all things, was focused on purpose and spiritual purity. Think about how your own sleep space is set up. Are there distractions? Is your room designed to be a peaceful retreat, free from technology and stress? Just like the monks, we can learn to simplify our sleep environments, creating a space that promotes rest and spiritual renewal. Whether it's through minimalist design, the use of calming scents, or simply setting aside time for reflection before bed, we can adopt some of the monks' wisdom to create a space where our minds and bodies can rest, rejuvenate, and reconnect with our inner peace. As we continue to explore the medieval monks' sleep practices, let's dive into how these sleep rituals and their connection to spirituality were also influenced by the concept of time, or rather, how time itself was structured around their sleep. Monks were far from living in the free-flowing, unstructured schedules we might experience today. Their days were divided into specific blocks, and sleep had a crucial role to play within this structured routine. Their approach to time wasn't just about staying productive, it was about ensuring that every moment was used in service of their spiritual goals. The medieval monastic schedule was designed to follow a set rhythm of prayer, work, and rest, which worked together to ensure that the monks' spiritual health was just as prioritized as their physical well-being. The monks followed the liturgy of the hours, a system that divided the day into a series of prayer times. These prayers marked the transitions between activities, whether work, meals, or sleep. Sleep wasn't simply about when you felt tired, it was structured around these times of devotion and reflection. In the same way, Hypnos, the god of sleep, had power over transitions, the monk's sleep was also a transition, a movement from the demands of the day to the peaceful connection with the divine that could only be found in sleep. So, what did this actually look like on a day-to-day basis? Well, monks didn't just sleep whenever they felt like it. Their rest was regulated by the larger spiritual rhythm of their day. The day typically began at an early hour, sometimes before sunrise, and the first prayer service, known as matins, would mark the official start of their day. But sleep wasn't just reserved for the night, the monks often broke their rest into periods of sleep throughout the day. This is where the idea of the first snooze button comes into play. After their early morning prayers, monks would often return to their beds for a short nap or rest period. This wasn't just about catching up on sleep, it was about resetting and ensuring they could approach their spiritual duties with a clear mind and renewed energy. They didn't stay asleep for long, but they gave themselves that small, sacred pause before they returned to their work and prayers. This practice of split sleep had a practical purpose. It allowed the monks to stay spiritually vigilant without sacrificing their need for physical recovery. Think of it like a snooze button, but it wasn't about laziness or procrastination, it was about preparing their minds and bodies for the next task in their day. Historians still argue whether this split sleep schedule was the result of practicality or spiritual necessity. Some scholars believe the monks were required to break up their rest because of the demands of their work and prayer schedule. Others suggest that their fragmented sleep was more about maintaining spiritual focus, ensuring that no matter how exhausted they were, they could always be ready for prayer and spiritual reflection. Either way, the underlying purpose of this sleep routine was clear. The monks' sleep was aligned with their spiritual mission, ensuring that they were always mentally prepared and spiritually aligned. This divided approach to sleep wasn't limited to just their waking hours either. The night watch was another important aspect of the monastic schedule. Unlike our typical sleep schedules, which are mostly uninterrupted, the monks would engage in vigilance, staying awake during parts of the night for prayer or other tasks. The night watch wasn't just a way to keep the monastery secure, it was seen as an opportunity to engage in devotional practices during the quietest parts of the day. Sleep and wakefulness were fluid for the monks, both were part of a ritualistic flow designed to help them remain spiritually engaged and attuned to the divine. Modern society often looks at the idea of divided sleep with skepticism, associating long, uninterrupted sleep with health and productivity. However, the monks of the Middle Ages understood that their fragmented sleep was a means of aligning themselves with their spiritual responsibilities. This wasn't about sacrificing rest for productivity, it was about honoring balance, between rest and work, between spiritual and physical needs. By breaking their sleep into segments, the monks maintained that balance, ensuring they were ready for each transition in their daily routine. In our fast-paced world, we often feel pressure to get the full 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, but we might be overlooking the benefits of split sleep or resting in intervals. Many modern studies show that a polyphasic sleep pattern, sleeping in multiple segments throughout the day, can be beneficial for those who need to stay mentally sharp and productive. The monks, in their own way, understood this long before we had modern science to back it up. Their sleep practices were built on the knowledge that rest is essential to maintaining focus and spiritual clarity, principles we can still apply today to improve our own sleep quality. So, tonight as you prepare to sleep, think about how you can incorporate some of the monks' principles into your routine. While we may not have their bells or prayer times, we can still embrace the idea of sleeping with intention, whether through mindfulness before sleep, short breaks during the day, or simply embracing the idea that rest isn't just about physical recovery. It's also about mental renewal, creating space to reconnect with yourself and ensuring your body and mind are aligned for the tasks ahead. As we continue exploring how medieval monks balanced spirituality and sleep, it's crucial to recognize how their approach to time and rest reflected not just practical needs, but also a deeper theological philosophy. The monks lived by the rhythms of liturgical time, and sleep was just as much a part of this sacred rhythm as prayer and work. The monks didn't view sleep as something separate from their spiritual life, instead, it was woven into their religious duties, and this approach to sleep became a foundational practice that influenced how we see balance and rest today. When we think of medieval monks, we often picture them in the serene silence of the monastery, praying in the early hours of the morning and working diligently throughout the day. However, sleep was just as important as their prayers. The monks knew that a well-rested body and mind were crucial for maintaining their spiritual focus. Their devotion to God wasn't just about prayer and work, it was about ensuring that their whole being was aligned with divine will. Sleep, in this sense, was seen as an active, spiritual practice, just like meditation or holy devotion. It was a way to honor the natural cycle of rest and to reconnect with God through peaceful rest. Interestingly, in many ways, the medieval sleep schedule had a ripple effect on the larger society. Monasteries were often centers of learning, and their sleep practices influenced not just the monks but the larger communities around them. Because the monks were responsible for preserving knowledge, their balanced schedules helped maintain clarity and focus, allowing them to dedicate their waking hours to the work of study and prayer. Their careful approach to time, where even sleep was carefully structured to balance rest and productivity, can be seen as a reflection of how medieval society valued discipline and spiritual devotion. In some ways, the monks were living examples of how to achieve balance, something we can still apply today in our own hectic, modern lives. Historians still debate whether the monks' strict schedule was born out of necessity or whether it was a spiritual discipline rooted in religious ideals. Was their sleep schedule simply a reflection of practical needs, to keep the monastery running smoothly with clear, organized times for prayer and work? Or was the sleep schedule part of a larger philosophical commitment to spiritual balance and devotion to God? Some believe the monks' rigid routines were born out of necessity, while others argue that they were a deliberate spiritual choice, reflecting their commitment to staying spiritually aligned and focused. Regardless of the reasoning behind their strict sleep schedule, one thing is clear: balance was at the heart of their lives. The monks understood that true spiritual discipline required maintaining balance, not just between work and rest, but between body, mind, and spirit. The monks' sleep rituals, although often interrupted by prayer or work, were part of a larger practice of holistic well-being. They didn't simply sleep, they structured their rest with intentionality. Every aspect of their lives was intertwined with their spiritual practices, and sleep was an integral part of their ability to serve God. In our own world, it's easy to dismiss sleep as just something that happens when we're too tired to stay awake. We often don't give it the spiritual attention or intentionality that it deserves. However, looking back at the medieval monks and their ability to structure their time for both rest and service, we can learn that sleep is more than just a break, it's an essential part of maintaining spiritual balance and mental clarity. By taking care to create space for rest in our own lives, we can align ourselves with the natural rhythms of the day and ensure that we are not only productive but also spiritually and mentally prepared for what lies ahead. The monks' intentional rest wasn't just about getting enough sleep. It was about creating a restorative space that allowed them to renew themselves for their spiritual duties. Today, we might not live in monasteries or follow the same schedule, but the lessons from their sleep rituals remain powerful. We too can benefit from structuring our own rest time with intention, making sure that we are recharging not only our bodies but our minds and spirits. Think about how you can integrate a more mindful approach to sleep into your own life. How can you create a peaceful environment, free from distractions? Could you incorporate a moment of quiet reflection before bed, just as the monks did? Even if you don't have an ancient bell ringing to signal your rest, you can still take inspiration from the monks' commitment to maintaining a balanced, spiritual approach to rest. Sleep is not just about escaping the stresses of the day, it's about renewing and reconnecting with yourself on a deeper level, just as the monks did so many centuries ago. As we continue to uncover the sleep rituals of medieval monks, let's take a step back and explore the larger cultural context in which their sleep routines were shaped. The medieval period was a time when spirituality and discipline were at the forefront of everyday life, and sleep was seen not only as a physical necessity but as an integral part of one's spiritual journey. The monks, living in monasteries dedicated to prayer, labor, and study, understood that sleep wasn't just about rest, it was about alignment with the divine and maintaining spiritual purity. For the monks, sleep was also a form of sacrifice. The simplicity of their sleep arrangements, basic wooden beds, minimal blankets, and often cold, drafty rooms, was designed to prevent overindulgence. They were intentionally uncomfortable to ensure that the monks did not fall into luxury or sloth. These modest conditions reflected their commitment to spiritual austerity. The goal wasn't to rest in luxury, but to rest spiritually and mentally so they could serve their higher calling without distractions. While modern sleep culture encourages maximum comfort, the monks saw discomfort as an opportunity to disconnect from worldly distractions and stay focused on their spiritual mission. Historians still argue whether this discomfort was a necessary aspect of their spiritual discipline or whether it was simply a reflection of the lack of resources in medieval times. Some argue that the monks' austere sleeping conditions were part of their devotion, while others believe it was simply a practical matter. Comfortable bedding was often out of reach for the average person in the Middle Ages. Regardless of the reason, it's clear that sleep for the monks was about more than just physical recovery, it was a time for spiritual alignment and mental focus. Despite the discomfort, monks did have a deep understanding of the need for rest. The monks' sleep schedules were not designed to deprive them of rest, rather, they were meant to balance spiritual and physical needs. The ritual of segmented sleep, as we discussed earlier, was rooted in the idea of balance. By interrupting their sleep during the night for prayer or work, the monks believed they could maintain focus and keep their spiritual alertness intact. In this way, sleep wasn't just something to be endured, it was integral to their ability to carry out their divine duties. In today's world, where sleep deprivation is often seen as a badge of honor, something that reflects a hardworking, driven lifestyle, the monks' approach might seem extreme. But it's important to recognize that the monks weren't depriving themselves of sleep for the sake of productivity, they were ensuring that their rest was part of a spiritual practice that allowed them to serve God with clarity and purpose. Their sleep wasn't mindless, it was intentional, aimed at ensuring they were spiritually and mentally prepared for their work. Take a moment to think about how the monks' sleep rituals might influence the way we view our own rest today. How often do we use sleep as a way to escape from our responsibilities, instead of seeing it as an opportunity to recharge for the challenges ahead? In our modern, fast-paced world, sleep is often viewed as a break, an interlude in the day to escape the demands of work, family, and social obligations. But the monks saw sleep as part of a larger rhythm, where rest was just as important as work, and both were connected to spiritual clarity and divine service. While we might not have the same spiritual motivations as the medieval monks, we can learn something valuable from their sleep practices. Balance is still at the core of modern sleep advice, whether we're talking about maintaining sleep hygiene, the importance of a routine, or creating the right environment for rest. The monks' ability to integrate rest into their spiritual lives, where every part of the day was connected to their higher calling, shows us how we can view sleep as more than just a physical break. It's an opportunity for renewal, clarity, and perhaps even a spiritual reset, whether or not we associate our rest with a religious practice. It's also important to think about how the monks' mental preparation for sleep might offer insights into the mental health benefits of modern sleep practices. The monks were intentional in their preparation for sleep, ensuring that their minds were clear and focused, free of distractions or sinful thoughts before they rested. Today, we often focus on mental health practices like meditation or journaling to help prepare ourselves for rest, and in a sense, we are following the same principles the monks used centuries ago. Creating a peaceful, distraction-free space before sleep can help us achieve the same kind of mental clarity the monks valued in their spiritual rituals. As you prepare for sleep tonight, consider how your own sleep rituals could be shaped by the intentionality the monks applied to their rest. Could you use your sleep time as a moment to reconnect with yourself? To create balance between work and rest? Just like the monks, we can treat sleep not as an interruption but as a necessary part of our daily rhythm, a time to restore, rejuvenate, and reconnect with our purpose. Even without the bells ringing, we can create a ritual of sleep that honors both our body and our spirit. As we explore how medieval monks approached sleep, it's essential to consider how their sleep practices reflected the wider culture of the Middle Ages and its view on work, spirituality, and self-discipline. The structure of monastic life was built around balance, between labor, devotion, and rest. Sleep wasn't merely a break from work, but an integral part of the monks' ability to fulfill their religious duties and maintain spiritual focus. They understood that without rest, their physical and spiritual energy would be depleted, and their ability to serve both God and community would be compromised. During the medieval period, the monastic schedule was governed by the rule of Saint Benedict, which emphasized a balanced approach to work, prayer, and rest. This schedule was carefully constructed to ensure that the monks could engage in their spiritual practices while also keeping their bodies healthy and their minds clear. The monks followed a daily cycle of prayer, study, manual labor, and rest, with designated times for sleep throughout the day. Their rest periods weren't just about physical recovery, they were about maintaining the mental clarity and spiritual focus needed for the rigorous demands of monastic life. Historians still debate whether the strict routines of the monks were based on spiritual necessity or whether they were simply designed to make the monks more productive. Some suggest that the interruption of sleep was a way to ensure the monks remained spiritually vigilant, preventing any lapse in their duties. Others argue that the structured routine was simply a practical response to the demands of monastic life, ensuring that the monks could complete their spiritual and physical tasks while still maintaining a degree of restfulness. Either way, the ritual of sleep played a crucial role in maintaining balance in the monks' life, allowing them to dedicate themselves fully to their religious calling. Beyond the practical considerations, the monks' approach to sleep was also deeply influenced by their belief in spiritual purification. Sleep wasn't just a time for the body to rest, it was a time for the soul to reset, free from the distractions of the waking world. This idea was tied to the medieval Christian belief that rest was a form of divine grace, allowing the body to recover while also purging sin. The monks believed that sleep had a spiritual purpose, helping them maintain their purity and prepare for their daily spiritual work. Sleep wasn't an indulgence, it was a sacred act, a necessary component of their spiritual discipline. The ritual of sleep was thus a way to cultivate mental and spiritual balance, ensuring that the monk's mind, body, and spirit were all in harmony. By integrating sleep into their religious rituals, the monks ensured that they were never disconnected from their divine purpose. Sleep was a moment of restoration, a time when the monks could draw closer to God and prepare themselves for the work ahead. Their approach to sleep wasn't just about physical relaxation, it was about maintaining a holistic sense of well-being, grounded in faith, discipline, and connection to the divine. This understanding of sleep as a spiritual practice can be seen in how we approach sleep today. While we may not live by the same strict schedules or follow the rule of Saint Benedict, the principles of balance and restoration are still relevant. Today, sleep is recognized not just for its physical benefits, but for its role in mental health, emotional well-being, and even spiritual renewal. Much like the monks, we need rest to maintain our clarity, focus, and purpose, whether we're focused on work, creativity, or personal growth. So, when you think about your own sleep routine, consider how you can incorporate a more intentional approach to rest. The monks didn't just sleep, they used sleep as a means of spiritual growth, rejuvenation, and mental clarity. Perhaps there's a way to view your own sleep as an opportunity to reconnect with your deeper self, not just a time to recharge the body, but a time to reset and reflect. Whether through mindfulness, gratitude, or simply creating a peaceful environment, you can adopt elements of the monk's approach and bring intention and spiritual peace into your own sleep routine. It's a reminder that rest is not just for the body, it's an opportunity for mental and spiritual alignment. The monks understood this deeply, and their sleep practices, rooted in their faith, offer us timeless lessons on the power of balance, discipline, and intentional rest. As you prepare for your own sleep tonight, think about how you can bring more purpose and balance into your rest. Just like the monks, sleep can be a powerful tool for reconnecting with your inner peace and your higher calling, whatever that may be. As we near the end of our exploration of medieval monks and their approach to sleep, it's fascinating to reflect on the legacy of their practices and how they still impact our modern sleep culture. The monks' rigid routines and disciplined approach to rest weren't just about maintaining physical health, they were about honoring the sacred balance between work, prayer, and rest. Sleep, in their worldview, was not a luxury or a break from the world, it was an essential part of their spiritual life, a time to reconnect with the divine, reset their mental clarity, and restore their bodies for the tasks ahead. While today's world has become more centered on the comforts of sleep, from luxurious mattresses to cozy blankets, the medieval monks' minimalist approach to rest offers us valuable lessons about the importance of balance. In modern society, we often treat sleep as simply a restorative activity, something we do when we're tired. But for the monks, sleep was part of a larger ritual that ensured they could perform their religious and community duties with spiritual discipline and mental clarity. They recognized that the body, like the mind and soul, needed time to renew, but they didn't believe in overindulging in that rest. The monks' commitment to spiritual austerity and the discipline of their sleep practices also highlights the importance of intentional rest in modern times. How often do we think about the purpose of our rest? How much of our sleep routine is mindful and purposeful, and how much of it is simply a reaction to exhaustion? The monks understood that rest had to be deliberate, it had to serve the greater purpose of their spiritual growth, not just provide physical comfort. While we may not live in medieval monasteries, we can learn from their approach to rest and see it as an opportunity to reconnect with our own sense of purpose, clarity, and balance. Today, many people are rediscovering the value of intentional rest. Just as the monks broke up their sleep into segments to stay spiritually engaged, modern practices like polyphasic sleep, power naps, and mindful relaxation show that quality sleep doesn't always require hours of uninterrupted rest. Instead, the key is in how we prepare ourselves for sleep and how we create an environment that is conducive to both physical rest and mental peace. Take a moment to think about how the monks' sleep rituals influenced our modern sleep habits. We may not rely on bells ringing to signal the start of the day or have strict schedules that demand interrupted sleep, but we can still prioritize rest with the same intentionality and purpose the monks did. By incorporating mindful rituals, whether it's a calming nighttime routine, gratitude practices, or simply creating a peaceful sleep environment, we can improve the quality of our rest and reconnect with a deeper sense of balance. Furthermore, the monks' minimalist approach to sleep also ties into the larger concept of simplicity in life. They believed that the less they relied on material comforts, the more they could focus on the spiritual aspects of their lives. In today's world of constant distractions and excess, there's wisdom in embracing a simpler sleep environment. Whether it's decluttering our bedrooms, reducing screen time before bed, or focusing on natural, calming elements like soft lighting or essential oils, we can create a sleep space that fosters restfulness without the need for excessive comfort or indulgence. Historians still debate whether the rigorous routines of the medieval monks were about spiritual commitment or simply the necessities of monastic life. Regardless, their approach to sleep offers a reminder that balance, between rest, work, and spiritual practice, is key to overall well-being. The monks' commitment to their spiritual mission through their sleep practices shows us that rest is not a passive act, it's a purposeful and intentional practice that requires mindful engagement with both our bodies and our spirits. So, as you prepare to sleep tonight, think about how you can reframe your own sleep routine. Can you incorporate intentionality and purpose into your rest, just like the monks did centuries ago? Perhaps it's taking a few minutes to reflect on your day, practicing deep breathing, or even setting the mood with calming scents. Just like the monks, you can turn sleep into a time for spiritual renewal, mental clarity, and physical recovery, allowing you to wake up refreshed and aligned for the day ahead. Sleep is a sacred act. It's an opportunity to reconnect with ourselves, reset, and restore our energy, just as the monks of the medieval period did in their devotion to their spiritual lives. May we approach our own rest with the same intentionality, creating balance and peace in our lives as we journey into the realm of sleep. As we draw closer to the end of our journey through the sleep practices of medieval monks, it's essential to understand how their influence on rest and routine extended well beyond the monastery walls and influenced the larger culture of the Middle Ages. While monks lived by a strict regimen, their dedication to sleep as a spiritual practice inadvertently helped shape medieval society's approach to rest, emphasizing the importance of balance, discipline, and purposeful rest. In the wider medieval world, the concept of sleep was deeply tied to the idea of time, especially the notion that time should be structured, divinely ordained, and aligned with the cycle of prayer, work, and rest. The monks, in many ways, became the timekeepers of medieval society, structuring their lives around a rhythm of devotion and restoration. They didn't just sleep, they approached sleep as a spiritual ritual, ensuring that their rest was intentional and aligned with their divine mission. The monks' sleep practices, rooted in their religious discipline, were also a reflection of the medieval mindset, where everything had its place and purpose. Sleep wasn't just a break from the demands of the day, it was integrated into the fabric of life, connected to the divine order and seen as a means to restore spiritual clarity. This belief in the spiritual value of rest was something the medieval world as a whole carried into its daily practices. Even though not everyone lived by the monk's strict schedule, the idea that rest and renewal were essential to life was deeply ingrained in the cultural consciousness of the time. Interestingly, the monastic influence on sleep rituals continued to shape society for centuries, even into the Renaissance and Enlightenment periods. As education and intellectual pursuits grew, so did the recognition that mental and physical rest were necessary for productivity and well-being. The influence of the monks' approach to sleep can still be seen in our modern sleep hygiene and the growing emphasis on restorative rest. Today, we understand that sleep isn't just about physical recovery but is also essential for mental clarity, emotional balance, and overall health. We might not follow the strict routines of the monks, but the fundamental principle they practiced, that rest and work should go hand in hand, remains relevant. The monks didn't just sleep as a means of recovering from the day's work, they approached sleep as an opportunity for spiritual healing, renewal, and connection to the divine. Today, we too can approach sleep with intention, recognizing that how we rest affects more than just our energy levels, it can influence our mental clarity, our mood, and our sense of purpose in life. The idea that sleep is sacred, much like the monks believed, is increasingly reflected in modern wellness practices. From the importance of creating a calming sleep environment to prioritizing mental relaxation before bed, we're beginning to view rest as more than just a break from daily life. In fact, sleep rituals today mirror many of the practices the monks adhered to, from sleep hygiene to meditation. Just as the monks prepared themselves mentally and spiritually for sleep, we can also cultivate calm and peace through practices like mindfulness and evening rituals that help us unwind. So, as you think about your own sleep habits tonight, consider how you can bring some of the monks' ancient wisdom into your modern routine. Can you incorporate purpose into your own rest? It might be as simple as dimming the lights, practicing deep breathing, or reflecting on your day before sleep. These small rituals can help us approach rest with intention and balance, just like the monks did in their own lives. Sleep doesn't have to be just a time to check out and escape the day's chaos. As we saw with the monks, it can be an opportunity for spiritual renewal, mental clarity, and even creativity. Sleep is a powerful tool, a reset button that allows us to recharge and refocus. By using rest as a way to reconnect with our own inner peace, we can restore not just our bodies, but our souls as well. Just as the monks lived by their spiritual rhythms, we can live by our own rhythms, ensuring that sleep serves not just as a time to recover but as an essential part of our spiritual well-being. As we continue to reflect on the profound impact of medieval monks' sleep rituals, it's fascinating to think about how their commitment to balance between work, prayer, and rest shaped not only their individual lives but also the greater cultural fabric of medieval Europe. In a time when the physical world and spiritual realm were deeply intertwined, sleep was seen as an essential practice that allowed individuals to maintain both physical strength and spiritual clarity. The monks understood that rest was not just an escape from daily life, but a time for spiritual rejuvenation and alignment with the divine. For medieval monks, sleep was also a time for purification. This wasn't just about sleeping for hours on end or indulging in rest, it was about giving the body, mind, and spirit time to reset. Before rest, monks would often purify themselves through ritual washing, prayers, or meditative practices to ensure they were in the best possible state before entering sleep. This act of spiritual purification showed their deep commitment to maintaining holiness and spiritual purity in every aspect of their life, even in sleep. They didn't simply rest to regain physical energy, they used sleep as a means of spiritual alignment. This ritualistic purification before sleep wasn't exclusive to the monks either. The broader medieval world, particularly in Christian communities, also saw sleep as a form of spiritual practice. The idea that sleep could offer time for mental clarity and spiritual renewal extended beyond monastic walls and found its way into the daily lives of many. This may have influenced medieval sleep customs, where people took extra time to prepare for rest, mentally and physically. Imagine going to bed with a moment of reflection, prayer, or just a moment of gratitude to prepare your spirit for rest. The medieval monks embraced this deeply, seeing it as part of their commitment to God. This intentional approach to sleep and rest may seem almost foreign in our busy, modern world, where sleep is often seen as a passive activity or something we squeeze into our overbooked schedules. But the monks didn't treat sleep this way. To them, it was a sacred time, a moment to recharge spiritually and mentally. They didn't just go to bed, they went to sleep with purpose. And while modern-day culture emphasizes sleep hygiene and comfort, we might consider incorporating some of the monks' intentional practices into our own sleep rituals. Historians still argue whether the ritualized sleep practices of the monks were purely spiritual or whether they were also a way of addressing physical exhaustion. Many scholars suggest that their rigorous routines were a direct response to the demands of monastic life, prayers, work, study, all of which required physical and mental energy. Others argue that the monks' sleep practices were a means of enhancing their spiritual connection and devotion to God, allowing them to stay mentally sharp for their religious work. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. The rituals of sleep were both a physical necessity and a spiritual discipline, ensuring that the monks remained aligned with their divine purpose. It's also worth noting how the monks' sleep patterns might have influenced sleep culture in the larger medieval society. In a time when many people lived agrarian lifestyles, with work closely tied to the rhythms of the seasons, sleep was naturally segmented. Farmers and workers would rise early with the dawn and take short breaks throughout the day to rest. The monks, however, took this segmented sleep to a more spiritual level, incorporating short periods of rest into their daily routine and using those breaks as moments of spiritual reflection. In this way, the monks influenced medieval society's broader sleep habits, even if indirectly, by setting an example of balanced living and a devotion to maintaining mental clarity. Consider how these same principles might apply to modern life today. We live in a world where we're often pushed to work around the clock and sleep becomes a luxury rather than a necessary part of life. But as we've seen with the monks, sleep is not just about physical recovery, it's an opportunity to reset, reconnect, and rejuvenate the body, mind, and spirit. In a world full of distractions, creating a peaceful space for rest, and honoring sleep as sacred time, might help us achieve the same balance the monks had. As you prepare to sleep tonight, think about the intentions you can set, whether it's mental clarity, spiritual renewal, or simply peaceful rest. Just as the monks viewed sleep as a time to recharge spiritually, we too can approach sleep with purpose and intention. Whether it's creating a quiet environment, engaging in a moment of prayer or gratitude, or practicing mindfulness, we can make sleep more than just a break. We can turn it into a sacred time, a time to recharge physically, mentally, and spiritually. As we near the end of our exploration of the medieval monks and their unique relationship with sleep, it's valuable to reflect on the long-term legacy of their practices. The monks' dedication to balance, between work, prayer, and rest, has reverberated through the ages, influencing the way we understand sleep and spirituality today. Although we may not follow their rigid schedules or experience their austere living conditions, their approach to sleep as a ritual has left a lasting impact on modern wellness practices and our contemporary understanding of rest. In today's world, we often treat sleep as a biological necessity, a time to recharge the body for the challenges of the next day. But for the monks, sleep was seen as something much more profound. It was a time to reconnect with the divine, to purify the mind and soul, and to prepare for the work that would follow. The monks' understanding of sleep as an integral part of spiritual life resonates in today's world where mental wellness and spiritual balance are increasingly prioritized. We may no longer have strict monastic schedules, but the idea that rest is sacred and vital to maintaining a balanced life is one that has endured. Consider how the concept of intentional rest and spiritual connection before sleep can be integrated into our own modern lives. We may not have the same liturgical bells ringing in the early morning hours, but we can create our own rituals of rest that allow us to unwind and enter sleep with purpose. Whether it's through mindful meditation, journaling, or setting intentions for the next day, we can find ways to turn sleep into an opportunity for mental clarity and spiritual rejuvenation, just as the monks did centuries ago. The idea that sleep is a tool for spiritual growth and mental clarity is more relevant today than ever. In a world that constantly demands more of us, we can adopt the monks' wisdom of balance, embracing rest as a way to reset not only our bodies, but also our minds and spirits. Modern sleep science often talks about the benefits of good sleep hygiene, but we can also benefit from incorporating more spiritual practices into our own rest routines. The medieval monks understood that true well-being involves more than just physical recovery, it's about restoring the balance between work, rest, and spiritual purpose. When we look at the monks' sleep rituals, we see a commitment to the idea that sleep is just as much about spiritual alignment as it is about physical rest. Sleep was, for them, a spiritual practice, and it is one that we can still embrace today. Whether it's through creating a peaceful sleep environment, engaging in pre-bedtime rituals, or allowing ourselves to rest with intention, we can all adopt aspects of the monks' sleep routines to find balance and renewal in our own lives. Think about your own approach to sleep. How can you create a ritual of rest that is meaningful, not just physically but spiritually? Just as the monks turned sleep into a time for spiritual connection, you too can make rest an opportunity for reflection, renewal, and a deeper connection with your own sense of purpose. Sleep, after all, isn't just a necessary act, it's a chance to reset, reflect, and prepare your mind and spirit for the challenges ahead. As you settle in for the night, think about how you can approach sleep with the same intentionality the monks practiced centuries ago. Imagine your own rest as a spiritual ritual, a time when you align yourself with peace, balance, and clarity. Let your sleep become a sacred time, not just for the body to recover, but for your mind and spirit to find their center. In doing so, you honor the timeless wisdom of the medieval monks and their belief that rest is not a luxury but an essential, transformative part of life. Sleep is a reconnection with yourself, with your deeper sense of peace and purpose. When you wake up, let that sense of peace carry you forward into the new day, and with it, the balance the monks worked so hard to maintain in their lives. As we reach the final chapter of our exploration into the medieval monks' approach to sleep, it's clear that their practices, though rooted in centuries-old tradition, have a profound legacy that still impacts us today. Their sleep rituals, meticulously crafted to ensure both physical rest and spiritual clarity, serve as a timeless reminder that sleep is not just a biological need, it's a sacred practice. The monks understood that rest was a critical part of spiritual health, allowing them to stay connected to their purpose, divine calling, and the broader flow of life. One of the most enduring lessons we can learn from the monks is the importance of balance. They didn't just sleep for rest, they structured their sleep around their spiritual disciplines, creating a routine that was designed to nourish the body, mind, and spirit. Today, we too can benefit from seeing sleep not as a mere break from the world but as a time to reconnect with ourselves and restore the balance we often lose during the chaos of the day. In today's fast-paced world, where work and social obligations often leave little room for rest, the monks' ritualized sleep practices offer us a glimpse into the importance of intentional rest. We live in a society where being busy and productive is often seen as a badge of honor, yet the monks knew that true productivity didn't come from overworking, it came from knowing when to rest, reflect, and restore. In many ways, they were ahead of their time, understanding that spiritual clarity and mental peace were just as vital to their well-being as physical rest. Historians still argue whether the monks' structured sleep routines were a result of spiritual devotion or simply a response to practical needs, the need to balance prayer, work, and rest within the limits of the day. While we may never know the full extent of their motivations, one thing remains clear: their sleep habits were a conscious effort to maintain balance, to ensure that every aspect of their lives, from physical labor to spiritual devotion, was aligned with their higher purpose. For us, the lesson is twofold: quality rest isn't just about sleeping more hours, it's about how we sleep. It's about creating a restorative environment, one that supports both the physical and spiritual aspects of our lives. The monks' focus on balance, both during waking hours and while resting, reminds us that rest is not a luxury or something to be rushed, it is a necessary part of spiritual wellness. As you prepare for sleep tonight, consider how you might adopt the monks' intentional approach to rest. Could you create a sleep ritual that involves spiritual reflection, gratitude, or mindfulness before bed? Just like the monks created a sacred space for sleep, you too can create a space for mental peace and spiritual renewal, allowing yourself the rest you need to recharge and face the challenges of the next day with clarity and focus. Imagine yourself lying down, just as the monks did centuries ago, with your mind and spirit aligned, your body ready to rest, and your heart filled with peace. In this moment, sleep is no longer just an escape from the world, but a reconnection with your deeper self, your spiritual well-being, and your life's purpose. As you drift into sleep tonight, remember that rest is not just a time to let go of the physical world. It's an opportunity to renew yourself spiritually, mentally, and physically. The monks' dedication to purposeful rest teaches us that sleep is sacred, a practice of balance, restoration, and rejuvenation. Like the monks, we too can find peace in our sleep rituals, reconnecting with ourselves and embracing the quiet energy that rest provides. May your sleep tonight be not just a time of physical renewal, but an opportunity for spiritual alignment, and may you awaken with a sense of peace and purpose, ready to face a new day with balance and clarity.